Hello everyone, and welcome to this 12th part of the Female Body Modeling Series from LunaCookie.com. My name is Jonathan Williamson, and in this part we're going to get started on one of the most daunting, difficult parts of the entire human body for most people, aside from the head at least, and that is the hands. Hands are very, very difficult when you're first starting out because they're something that, we kind of take for granted. Everyone sees them, you see them, 100,000 times a day, however many times. You're constantly using them. You're working with your hands. Everyone knows what a hand should look like and feel like, but as soon as you get down to actually trying to create the hand, it's not only difficult from a topological sense, but also trying to get it to feel natural and work right. So I'm going to try and help you through a little bit of that today. We're going to be doing this in two parts. This first part, we're going to be modeling the initial hand, the main shape and whatnot, to try and get our mesh topology down and get some of the initial shape. And then in the next part, we're going to work to then actually refine the hand, get a nice relaxed pose, and make it feel really good. So what I've done to prepare is I've moved our regular references to layer 11 right down here, as you can see. And then in layer 12, I have a couple of new references of just the hand views here. And you'll see that I position these as empties just in 3D space, just to give us a good approximation of where the hands go and their shape. They're not exactly accurate. You can see that we can adjust them a little bit, whatever. But what we're going to be doing is using these as the initial starting point for how to model the hand. And then once we've got this, we're going to basically work with the model to then relax it to get a much more relaxed pose rather than this rigid, spread out pose that the hand is currently in. We're also going to be modeling this as its own piece that then we will join later. So to get started, I'm just going to go into edit mode on the body. I'm going to select this bottom circle. I'm going to hit Shift D, right click, and then P and separate by selection. This way I can just select it and just work on the hand and not have to worry about anything else while I'm doing this. The other thing I'm going to do then is to go ahead and rotate this by rotate my view around, so I'm basically looking at it. I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees such that it then fits with the wrist approximately. Because this way, I'll be able to then just rotate it back and line it up. But this way I can just model right with my references. So now the first thing that we need to understand, and I'm going to just go and hide the back view of the hand, or oops, wrong one. I'm going to hide this one, just so that we don't have to worry about it. So let me save my file real quick. All right, so first thing to understand with the hand is to understand how the topology is going to be formed. First things first is we're going to have an edge loop for each finger like this. This is fairly common sense because then these are going to be extruded out kind of like cylinders like this. But where the hand gets difficult is with the thumb, because we also want that edge loop going around the base of the thumb like this and for the thumb to come out like so. We also would like to have this coming across to create a fairly consistent loop all the way through, such that then, these can connect through somewhere in there. And we have this loop back here, so we need to find out how to merge all of this together. And the key thing to think about here, and to think about such that this hand can be animated, is to follow the muscle flow. And the largest, most prominent muscle form and tissue and whatnot in the hand is the padding of the thumb. So we want to have a loop that follows this basic shape. So then if we go ahead and just ignore, say, these pieces here, we have a loop coming around here, and then we'll kind of average that loop out at the base of the thumb, something like this, such that we can then connect these dots like so. And then this can just continue on back through here. We'll have this coming through, this obviously going out like this, and like that, cutting across, something like that. So that's our basic thumb. To connect the rest of it though, we want, this coming over here. So this will get connected. There's obviously, this is going to be connected through here just by necessity, it has to. And so we have the rest of this area to try and figure out how we want to connect these. But as long as we have this main shape, that's the most important thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and hide this, or we'll just toggle down the opacity. We don't really need it too much yet. And let's just start by extruding this entire circle out like this. We'll rotate it around, going to scale it along the x-axis, rotate it back to fit, and then move it in like so. Let's also scale it down along the y-axis a little bit. And this is the main palm shape of our hand. Maybe we'll scale it down just a little bit more. And then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and create each one of these circles because these are the key parts here. So let's position the 3D cursor right here, and then we'll move it over from the side view, something like that. And I'm going to hit Shift A, adding a mesh and a circle. And let's just hit F6 to bring up our operator panel. I'm going to change this down to 8 vertices will be plenty. And we'll set the radius to just 0.1. Then we can rotate this around, scale it down, and I think that will work quite well. Looking at the position of the vertices, I like, if we look at the hand, we can see we kind of have these 2 edge loops coming across on the edges here. So having a single vertex along the edge on each side will be ideal. So that positions this edge loop first. Then let's go ahead and just duplicate this for each one of the fingers. Say something like this. And we don't have to get it real exact just yet, but we just want to position these approximately. Then let's also go ahead and connect these dots. So we'll just fill in the faces between them. Because what we're doing is we're just keeping the topology very simple and going with what we know has to be there first. And one of the things that we definitely want is we want to have that loop with each hand. Now I don't want to connect these directly because then I wouldn't be able to add an edge loop in between them and add in, this nice curve right through there. I want to be sure that I give myself good full control over that. Let's actually just bring these back a little bit, maybe right about in there, because then I can actually just extrude each one of the fingers when I'm ready. But we're not quite ready for that because we need to look at how to actually connect these together. But before I do that, let's also select one of our circles here, and we're going to set the base loop of the thumb. And so this is the base of the thumb right there. Okay? And you'll notice that I'm not worrying about the actual shape or anything like that. I'm going to move this back behind. There we go. I'm just getting the topology down such that I can then work with it as I go along. So first, let's go ahead and get this section cut in. I'm just going to start by extruding this circle. I'm going to scale it up just a little bit, and then I'll scale further along the x-axis just so I don't widen it too much along the y. And this gives me the starting point to kind of see how I want to connect the thumb. Well, first things first, we can see that this line right here, or this vertex, would really connect very nicely with this. This is kind of going down the center of my hand, so I'm going to let that happen. Let's just add another edge loop, slide this down, and then we're just going to merge these two together. So we'll select the two, we're going to hit W, merge, at center. And I'm going to do the same thing at the other side, like this. I'm going to merge these two together. Because then I can go ahead, just select, say, all of these faces, and I'm going to hit X, delete the faces. That way, I don't need to worry about them, and I can just start kind of filling in my topology. I would like to have this full loop coming all the way around like this, which actually means that I didn't actually want to connect these after all. So let's rip these back apart, just hitting V. So you select the vertex, hit V, it'll pull that apart. Because then I can just actually pull these back, and I can let this start to form that edge loop. So I'll do this on both sides. Maybe about like that. And then I'm just going to bring these around. So I'll fill this. And I will fill this. And then I just need to bring this vertex down. So I just select it. I hit E to extrude. And then I can fill in this space. Like that. Because this then gives me that face loop coming all the way around, forming that main tissue in the thumb. This means I can also go ahead and just add another edge loop right down the center and just fill in these. So I'll select these areas, fill them in. Okay. And I just need to do the same thing on the back side. And if I just switch into local view, then I can just very quickly just extrude all of these out, fill in the shapes. Oops. Okay, so you can see right now I have a slight problem because I've got too much topology in here. So what I need to do is I need to basically move this over. I need to get rid of this edge loop tentatively. And then the same thing down here. Now, before I remove those edge loops, though, I need to think about what the consequences of doing that will be. Well, with this one, it's going to go, if I remove this, I need to find another way to connect it with the wrist, because this is a perfect representation of the number of vertices in our wrist currently. Well, I don't necessarily want to do that, but I could probably just bring this vertex down and then fill this, and then it all just works. There's a very good chance that we're going to remove some of this extra geometry in here, or we'll add some additional geometry. But until we do that, or until we know what we want to do, we want to try and preserve the geometry around the wrist as best we can, because that's going to make it a lot easier to connect with the actual wrist here in a little bit. Okay, so that gives me that geometry right there. Now, there's other ways that you could have done that. That maybe would have been a little bit more straightforward. Now that we look at this shape, we can actually see that it's basically just this, just extruded out into a circle. But by having gone through the manual way, it gives you a more clear picture of how this is actually constructed and why we're constructing it that way. So that's why I like to do it that way. For one, also, it's just, to me, it's easier to visualize when you work with just focus on the loop, not necessarily on the original geometry first, and then connect that loop with said original geometry. And for me personally, I find that a lot easier to create than the other way around. So now I need to start connecting things with the hand, or with the fingers. So the first thing is, let's do the edges, because the edges are easy because we have these just single vertices on each piece that we can then just connect with an edge. We can do this on both sides, so we just connect those like that. And that gives us a good starting point to kind of see where we want to go with this. Because then what we need to do is, one, just fill in the surrounding faces like this. But as soon as we do that, you can start to see a problem arising in that we have way more vertices around the fingers than we do around the entire hand. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add in some additional geometry. You can see this is starting to stretch to compensate for all this. And this is where some of the tricky parts with the hand start to come in, because basically we need to do some things like this. We need to take some corners, send some of the topology in different directions, and just terminate some edge loops throughout such that we can get nice, good control. Okay. But before we do that, let's go ahead and add in or connect some additional loops. And the loops that I like to connect come straight down. I'm going to add a new layer here, and we're just going to make it red so you can see this. What I like to do is I like to follow a lot of the anatomy of the hand, in this case, the tendons that connect to the top of the knuckles. So if we have a tendon coming down like this, and like this, like this, and like this, and then also from the thumb, approximately, that's not exact. But if we have those there, this then kind of tells us where some of our geometry should work. And in this case, let me just get rid of that layer. I want to connect the single top vertex to a straight path each time. So this one, I'm going to connect. This one, I'm going to connect. This one, I'll connect. And this one, I'll connect. Because that then kind of sets the map for how my topology needs to be created in the rest of the model. And so I can do the same thing with the bottom side here. I'll connect these, connect that, and connect that. So now I just need to find a way to fill in the rest of this geometry very easily. Well, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just selecting all these edges that I just created, and I'm going to subdivide them. The reason I'm going to subdivide them by hitting W and subdivide is because now, one, I can just fill this up a little bit further, like this. And the same thing on the other side. But it means that I can also now just say take this edge, hit E to extrude, scale it in, and then fill it right there, and then fill it on both sides, and suddenly I filled that space in between the fingers. And so then I can just do this on each one of these. So I'll just take this, I'll take this, I'll hit E to extrude. I can hit W. Since I've got both of them selected, I'll hit W and just smooth, and that will effectively scale them down. Because then I can just fill that space, fill that space, and then again do this with each of the fingers. If I go into edge mode, the selection can be a little bit faster. Okay, so then I'll do this on the bottom side as well. All right, let's select everything, hit W, shade smooth, and Control N to fix any normals that we may have. And then we need to add in, say, a loop right here, which allows us to fill this space and this space. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. And then you can see that I have an extra vertex right here that I need to solve. So this is one problem that we've suddenly run into that we're going to have to find a way to fix. Namely that we need to add an additional edge loop here, but our wrist is not going to have that additional edge loop. But we're focusing just on the hand right now. So let's go ahead and add that edge loop. And then we can just, using vertex snapping, just hit G, snap to there. That will raise the whole loop up. Select everything, W, and remove doubles. And then we'll figure out how to remove that additional edge loop later down the road once we've got the entire hand built. So this is the base of our hand. Now some things will change here, but we're not going to worry about that for the time being, because now I'm just going to extrude a single finger. And let's leave local view so I can bring the reference back. So we've got a single finger here. We can scale it down then to the appropriate size. And then I'm going to add in 2 additional edge loops. And these edge loops then are going to represent the joints in the finger itself. Okay, and in this part, we're actually only going to do the one finger, then we'll just duplicate the finger across and manipulate it for the other parts. So now let's go ahead and fix or extrude the tip here. So on the tip, I'm basically just going to fill this in. So let's just select these, fill it, and then the same thing here. And then we can just add another loop right through the tip here to then snap to each one of these points. And then select everything, W, and remove doubles. We'll bring that out a little bit more. And then we can pull the tip out to the end. So that is the basis of our hand. If we take a look at it, we can kind of see how this is going to start to work. Because we're going to add in each of the fingers. We'll attach them there. We'll do the same thing with the thumb. Then we can start doing things like bringing in the palm, like this. And we can start adding any additional geometry that we need. And it's all going to start to come together pretty quickly. But this is the base of the hand. Let's go ahead and add in the thumb real quick. So for the thumb, I'm going to do the same basic thing that I did here. I'm going to scale this down, rotate it around, and then we're going to fill it. And you'll notice that I'm filling it basically perpendicular to the direction of that the finger bends. Or actually not perpendicular, but parallel, such that since the thumb bends like this, then I want the path of those edges that the edges that I filled in that same direction. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, the thumb is not straight like that. Well, that's because we're actually going to go in and a little later we'll rotate it around, position it, and do everything that we need to do with the thumb to make it fit as it should. But that's not for this part. Next, we want to do the joints. So we already have the first joint, which is right here. So then we just need the next joint, something like this. Scale it down along the z-axis maybe. We can go and rotate it around just a bit to get the initial shape. Just do a little bit with the thumb just to help give us that approximated shape. of the actual finger and the way that it looks. And that then feels pretty good. Okay, so, some of you are probably thinking, wow, this looks really, really terrible at the moment. It's super basic and, doesn't really look like a human hand yet. It looks exactly like, what I mentioned at the beginning with hands not looking natural, being hard to create, etc. And that's just because we've only created the base of it, and we've got all the detailing and whatnot left to do. But this is a really good stopping point for today. I know this is a little bit shorter than usual. We're only at 20 minutes, but with the hand being such a detailed piece and something that is inherently difficult to create, I want to be sure that we take it slowly and really understand the entire process. So I actually encourage you to go through this part multiple times as you're working through it to kind of understand what everything is happening, what we're doing with the whole part, with everything, and just to get a good grasp on it, because it's not going to get any easier. In some ways, this was the most difficult part, laying down the initial topology, but getting a good natural feeling hand is still quite difficult and takes a lot of practice and good eye and just a lot of patience. So I'm going to go ahead and end this now, and thanks for watching. Part